Welcome. I am so happy to have you this evening and do this interview. I've known of you since 1994, actually a little before that, but certainly at the first conference at Stanford and putting together the first IEA conference in 1996. So it's a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you.
And Jerry, where did you learn about the Enneagram? What was your first exposure?
Well, it was I was a Jesuit at the time, and I think it was 1971. It's hard to believe it was that long ago. It's also hard to believe that I'm still interested in the Enneagram.
I feel the same way.
You think I'd be sick of it by now, but I'm not.
No.
So it was in a class that Bob Oakes, who was a Jesuit, he was a systematic theologian, which is about the most boring theology you can imagine, systematic theology, but he drifted. So he was up in New York. He did some work when they were doing psychedelics research up there in New York. Then he went to Mecca out at Esalen. And then I don't know if maybe Claudio was teaching at Esalen, but then he went to Claudio's house apparently where he was teaching the first class actually of the Enneagram. Bob Oakes was in Almas and Sandra Maitre, and so he was in that very first class. And then he came back to Chicago and was teaching in the theology school there. So Pat O'Leary was in that class with me, and it was a 2-semester course. So it was called Religious Experience. No, wait a minute. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. So the Enneagram was part of it, but not the whole thing. So we learned meditation, yoga postures, all kinds of interesting things. But the Enneagram kind of ran all the way through it. And, at night before class, he would call up Claudio and say, well, now, how's this go again? And was St. Paul an 8 or a 1 or, So we were in close touch with Nerano as well as Bob Oakes. And he didn't teach it. I was just thinking, he didn't teach it all. Okay, here's everything you need to know about a 1, a 2, a 3. But here's a self-image for each type, and here's the vice, and here's this. So he would go around the circle, but adding a piece to the puzzle each time around. So it was kind of a nice way to learn it. And the other nice thing was that we had time because it was 2 semesters. So we could talk to each other and say, hey, what's this stuff about a 4? What is that like? And people were really very self-disclosing. It's amazing. I found with the Enneagram, people are just very willing to talk about themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm maybe it's like, well, hell, you got me pegged anyway, so I might as well just tell you what it's like. You got it.
The self-disclosure is there. And, going back a little bit, Naranjo in his autobiography and what he said to me when I interviewed him was he didn't teach until September of 1971. So when Patrick and I were trying to weave this together, I know for a fact that Naranjo also told me that he talked about it at Esalen, even though he wasn't teaching it. And Patrick seemed to think that he was at Esalen, Bob Oakes. So they would have naturally talked then.
Yeah.
Even though the official training didn't start till September of 1971. Does that kind of when did you guys start?
I want to say it would have been in September of 71. I'd have to go back and look at my theology transcripts to see what year that was. I thought it was around 71, and he had just come back from that course from Claudio.
Well, he came back in January. He was only in the 10-month course for 6 months.
This is Claudio now.
Claudio, but he had to recover. Yeah. So when did Bob Oakes come back? Right before that?
Well, yeah, I thought the course was this first semester would have been September 71 and then January 72.
But you added just a really important piece of the equation that they were on the phone talking.
Yeah.
because Naranjo was very interested in how the Jesuits, with your natural inclinations and study, would work with the Enneagram. So that makes total sense. That the timing would still be right, but they'd be talking on the phone, but would have met and conversed prior to that.
Yeah. But he would give us mimeographed notes that were pretty sketchy. And I thought, I'm not sure. They may have been notes that Bob Oakes put together himself. I thought maybe they were the notes that he took listening to Naranjo.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And because Don had the paragraphs that were Bob Oakes' notes.
Okay.
He then built
its
intuitive sense of what the types would do.
Yeah.
But they were about a little over a paragraph for each type. Does that
Well, that's right. But it wasn't like a paragraph, but it was more like sentences. It was like a bullet point. Yeah. And when I read, after later on, Claudio's book and Helen's first book, it's very similar to what we learned. So the three of them were somehow in the same cahoots, same cohort, but it's very similar.
Yeah, Claudio was cohorts, not with Helen. He disapproved of Helen.
Yeah.
Because she didn't give attribution to the source of the material. But Charles Tart was their connection. So Claudio knew Charles Tart knew Helen. So you're on to something really important, because the theory was, Eureka's theory was that she got the information through Naranjo, but she actually said she got it through Charles Tart.
Interesting. So Charles Tart, didn't he go down to Chile with that group?
Yes.
But then did he also go to Claudio's first class, Charles Tart, or didn't?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
They were, let's see, that was not recorded, but I knew that they were definitely cohorts because they were all Naranjo's cohorts. He got the group together to go to Chile. He actually met Echazo in 1969 when he was presenting, and was really focused on the meaning that could contribute, since he was interested in all things that were introspective and personality based and spiritually based. And then he got the group to come down the following year in July 1st, 1970. But he asked Echazo to be his teacher, Naranjo, right after his son was killed on Easter Eve in 1970. So he really kind of focused 100% of his time, but the actual training did not start until July.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Yeah. And then this is just hearsay. Did Claudio left early? He left early on in the training.
Yes, it's the way he shared the story is that he was directed by Echazo because of his grief and because of his desire for transformation, that Echazo sent him to the desert for 40 days and to pray and meditate. Now, here's the interesting part. I've interviewed other Euricans, and not just Naranjo, but a woman that was there, and she corroborates the story. But what happened is Naranjo thought that Echazo privately supported him and publicly defamed him to help him manage his narcissism. What the Euricans were told by Echazo is that Claudio had a God complex, sacred complex, and wasn't working cooperatively with the group. So they voted him out after 6 months.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard. Yeah. I'm not sure why, but he was asked to exit. Yeah.
But he never knew what they had been told. His group, in particular, the other fives, just said he wasn't, a team player. And so he thought, oh, well, Echazo's putting me in this situations so that I deal with my social issues. And that's what he shared with me. And not just with me, but with people that were in that return training in 1996. So it's fascinating to get other pieces. And you've added something so valuable that he was talking to Oakes. And that matches with Naranjo saying his fascination to see how the Jesuits would do with it. And he liked it. But then he said he offended Oakes by bringing in a fourth way teacher. Were you there when that happened?
No.
Claudio said he apologized. And it's actually on video. If there are 2 interviews of Naranjo that you can find on YouTube, and he talks about it in there.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's sad that he didn't know the other picture, what Achazo was saying. But even though Achazo was saying that, he thought it was for his own growth, because Achazo called him a mythomaniac in letters to the school when he was complaining about the Jesuits, and he was complaining about the publications and Helen Palmer and all of that. Yeah.
I think that was part of the issue. I don't know if Naranjo was mad at Oakes for blabbing too much about the Enneagram, but I know Bob Oakes was mad at us because we kind of took an informal oath. Well, we won't tell anybody about this. Well, that lasted about 2 weeks.
I know, which is basically what Naranjo did.
Yeah.
He had everybody swear confidentiality the way he had with Achazo.
Yeah.
And then, well, guess what? Someone's going to say something somewhere.
Yeah. So I took it, like, don't talk about this until you really understand it. So it's not like, well, this is some secret esoteric system, but make sure you know what you're talking about. Before that didn't slow us down,
No. How many were in your group?
Oh, Pat, that's a good question. Pat remembers maybe like about 15 in that class.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
But so there were some other Jesuits and then some people who weren't Jesuits, men and women. And we actually one time he and I were trying to get the names of everybody there, but I'm not even sure. I think I can picture some of the Jesuits. I don't remember their names now, but we were all in school. We were all learning theology, so we were 30s, late 20s. Yeah.
And what did you think? Like, did you immediately know you were a 5?
Oh, no, I immediately narrowed myself down to a 5, 6, 4, 1. I think that was no, it's 7, maybe a 7. So I got basically all the types that are kind of connected, except for the 1. But I think 5s and 1s, we had to have a lot in common.
Social's very 1-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. But then Oakes finally said, you're a 5. Oh, all right.
Well,
So I got the wings in my core type and where I go for, and I knew I wasn't an 8. I knew I wasn't a 3. I think maybe I had a 9 in there too. I just about eliminated maybe 2 or 3 types that I didn't think I was. So that, yeah. But the 5 fit. I have a lot of 9 in me. So with your Tritype, I think I'd be a 5, 9, 2.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I've always thought you were.
Yeah.
That would be why you would get that 1, because the 9
right in between the 9 and the 2.
Yeah, exactly. And 7, that if you the continuation, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1, it goes back to, and so in another way, it makes sense, but it's not this simple.
Yeah.
You have to know the Enneagram to appreciate that. But yeah, so what you just described would be someone with your Tritype, where you would see other types, not just the 5.
Yeah. I didn't see the 2, but if I'm, if you say, well, between a 2, 3, and 4, which one are you? The 2 would come up. 4 is the wing.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought, oh, hell, this is another typology. It's like all these other typologies. So I wasn't that taken by it. But then the more we got into it, it really, for me, it provides like a framework. And you can hang all kinds of other different theories on, like Ichazo. Do you hang the 7 capital sins plus 2, or you can hang this on it, put this on it, put these different theories of psychology on it. like it's got a lot of perennial wisdom in there, and it just fits a lot of different aspects of the personality. So I liked it.
And that's what Naranjo did. He took all the research that had been done on personality because that was his focus. He was a Fulbright scholar. I don't know if you know that, and at Harvard, and he also was at Ohio studying personality, and then out to Berkeley. So it was all personality research, and that was his thing. So he just took everything he liked, every system, whether it was Karen Horney or Delvin's body types, and then describe the types, just put them in the buckets. Chazo had kind of the core issue, the message,
right?
But the personality details came from Naranjo.
That's right. Yeah.
Really, what you and I teach is a combination of the two.
Or even I don't do that much with Gurdjieff, but I mean he's with his what does he call it? The primary fixation or whatever he calls it.
Oh, the chief feature.
Yeah, the chief feature. So that's kind of similar.
7. He didn't have 9. He only had 7.
Yeah. But isn't the chief feature kind of like, well, what's the main issue with your way of being in the world?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Enneagram of personality began with a Chazo, like actually putting personality issues, and then filled out by Naranjo. So I just think that what I teach is more the Enneagram of personality, rather than the history of the symbol itself, because symbol dates back to antiquity, of course, but can't find a direct line in between. However, there are other Enneagrams like Lully's. You're probably familiar with his work.
John Lilly, he was in that group that went down, right?
Lully, L-L-U-L-L.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
And so he mapped the 9 states on the Enneagram.
That's right.
Well, he did a lot of other things. He used like a symbol where it was all connected, but still 9 points. But
that's
not
right. Yeah, that's right.
One that Gurdjieff and Chazo used, which is believed to map divinity and creation, movement in the universe, the law of the circle, the wholeness.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 and the 7, the movement, and together it maps change and a 9-fold path.
Yeah, I know Lowell's chart it's fascinating. I mean, it's got all those moving parts, and so you can. It's kind of like a kaleidoscope. You've got everything fit in. Everything fits in there. Yeah.
It's fascinating because I had never seen that, and I'd kind of already seen the interconnection with every type, that there was something like each other type and exactly the opposite. And except you remove the wing types and you get the tritype, but you leave in the wing types and you see how everything's connected to everything else. But it's overwhelming in terms of understanding the dynamics of the types. Yeah. So what did you like in particular that you could use to the Enneagram symbol? So you mentioned that you could see other things, and I had the same experience. All those things I had learned, the Enneagram could hold, and you could use the Enneagram with all of it. Yeah.
I used to blame it just on kind of being a 5, because I'm looking for, well, how does this fit with everything else that's ever been thought at any, any time, any place. So I still do it. I'm looking for, well, I did my dissertation comparing the Enneagram with Myers-Briggs, and then with Theodore Milan had 8 types. So kind of, comparing stuff with him. It's just as a random thought, which most is all I have are random thoughts. I just went on to ChatGPT AI.
Yes.
I said, okay, here's the Enneagram. Here are Milan's 8 types. Which ones go together? I swear to God, Chapped in about 5 seconds came up with the exact same thing I found with data. I mean, cut it out.
It's amazing, but from what I understand, it's about 2 years behind. But collecting everything on the internet. So if someone's already said that, it could have happened, but it can also hypothesize to a degree if it was recorded somewhere.
Yeah.
But like there is a lot of misinformation too.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Mhm.
like
But it
when
would
I
have, here's a description of Milan's types. Here's a description of Enneagram types. Oh,
just
this sounds like this.
yeah, and wrote it for you and did a little
That's
7
exactly right.
paragraphs on it.
I could, if only they didn't have that when I wrote my dissertation. Oh my God, it saved me a hell of a lot of time.
That's the way I feel.
Mhm.
But it doesn't like you to give it more than it just wants a very simple question and to do that. And it gives you the
Mhm.
introduction and the conclusion and 5 paragraphs max.
Mhm.
And I get in an argument with it because sometimes I like to just have a check for typos, not to change what I say.
Yeah.
But I was writing about Naranjo asking a Chazo to be his teacher, and it starts arguing with me. Nope. It says, there's no record of Naranjo asking a Chazo to be his teacher. And I go, hey, don't tell me.
Stop making it up. That's right.
But it hadn't been documented. So
Mm.
it was
Mm.
telling me that I was wrong, which kind of surprised me that it would go that far. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot, and it's going to get better and better.
So you felt insulted by
I thought,
yeah. What the
asking for an opinion. I already have my own opinions.
yeah, exactly. And mine's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I
Who do you,
interviewed the guy.
who do you
I
think you
also
are?
talked to Chazo's people, so I know the other side. Um, and Chazo even wrote stuff and letters to the school about when he met Naranjo. I mean, I know these things, and I'm not going to say it without having the backup. But yeah,
That's right. A computer, you weren't there. I was there.
yeah.
But as we're talking, I mean, people are still doing that these days. So like at that's the last global conference. I'm blocking on her name, Joan from Boston. Anyway, the Enneagram and internal family systems, Enneagram and Karen Horney. I'm trying to think of, it's over, and well, I don't know about polyvagal theory, but I suppose that has something to do with the 3 centers.
Yeah.
So people are kind of, this stuff kind of fits the Enneagram. It's not like the Enneagram is way out in left field, but a lot of people are using different words, different metaphors, but we're kind of talking about the same thing.
So when did you start teaching? So you took 2 semesters with Oates, and then so by now it's like 1972, mid 1972. So when did you start teaching?
Well, so I finished theology. Then I went, I think, let me get my time straight here, to X-High for about 3 years in Cincinnati. Then I taught psychology, or I worked in a counseling center there. Then I went back to get my PhD at Loyola. Oh, God knows when I started there. But anyway, so after 3 years, after theology, 3 years of working in a high school. And then I did my dissertation at Loyola. And part of that, to get participants, so I would give Enneagram workshops and give them my test and the Myers-Briggs or the Milan's test. So it would have been, when I was studying psychology then. So then I would do Enneagram workshops, and then eventually, kind of started a training program, and I taught it at Loyola in the
So what
Institute of
year was
Pastoral
that?
Studies.
So what year do you think that was when you started your own?
Well, I got my degree in 81, so go back 3 years, 78.
So when the books started coming out, like I didn't know a book. I mean, of course, Patrick and Maria's book was out in 84.
Okay, there was nothing written when I did my dissertation.
Yeah, and
There
I didn't
wasn't anything.
know about
Yeah.
the book. I got Kathy Spieth's training manual that I just happened to be in a class on symbols because I went to everything, any system, anything that interested me. And came to the Enneagram symbol, the teacher said, oh, does anyone know anything about the modern day application of this symbol? And only one person raised their hand. She happened to be sitting right next to me. And he said, well, can you say a little bit about it? And I go, wait, oh, personality? I got to talk to you. And he had attended while she was getting her PhD, a semester course with Kathy Spieth. And Kathy, of course, learned from Naranjo.
Mm-hmm.
So I had all the handouts and the,
Mm-hmm.
not a book.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Pat had the first book, and then Helen came out. Is that right? Yeah, then Helen came out with her book.
A
Yeah.
month apart, Dawn and then Helen. Dawn in 87, Helen in 88.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there were two other dissertations before mine, but that was about it.
People that love typologies love the correlation. So I
Mhm.
used to teach MBTI, and then I learned the Enneagram. The Bay Area Association craft. I would do panels and combine them.
Yeah.
But what did you find if you were doing your dissertation on anything that in particular that intrigued you or that you noticed about a type and of either system that went together?
What's coming up is what I actually found, which made sense.
Yeah.
So not surprisingly, fives were introverted, and twos would have been twos and threes more extroverted. What I really found was that you can't predict one from the other. You can't predict, oh, if you got this Myers-Briggs pattern, then you're this on the Enneagram. There's just a lot of variation.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found the same thing.
But there are some congenial things, like it makes sense that certain types would be more judging, certain other types would be more perceiving. Some, I mean, the fours, there was actually, I think in, I don't know, 54s that were in the sample. I think one was a thinker. And you would think it's impossible that a four could be not be a feeling type, but one was a thinker. Or you would say, how could fives be a feeler?
Exactly.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's not necessarily a lot of emotions, but it's very subjective, you know. Um, and eights are both extrovert and introvert. They tend to be more perceiving, at least in the group that I had.
Yeah. Like a lot of people say, oh, yeah, eights have to be ESTJs. And I know a lot of ENTP8s
No.
and INFJ eights,
Mm-hmm.
like Deb Uden that we know. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but the introversion and extroversion were close,
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, the other thing that I totally agree with is that the Enneagram is kind of the motivation. The instinct is kind of what triggers us, and then we try to handle it like our ego types.
Yeah.
And then the execution is our MBTI, in my experience. So, and what we're going to combine, like as an ENTP, I want to see everything, balls in the air. That's what's exciting to me, and all these interconnections. I don't want to deal with the details, but I'm going to see the patterns.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Be excited about it and enjoy it. And my father was an 8 that was the same, but an 873, I'm an 874. I'm going to throw in that emotion, but I'm still a thinker.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, I'm going to think about the emotions. So back to what you were saying about the 4, I taught at the Federal Reserve for 15 years, going in regularly. I only met one 4 that was a T. And he had to disguise being a 4 because it wasn't really accepted in that more rigid environment. So it's
surprised there were any 4s in that group at all.
Yeah, and they were in the administrative parts.
Aha. Mm-hmm.
There weren't. And let me tell you, 3,000 people, right? And I taught to every division in the Federal Reserve, but I got to tell you, I only came across like 6 4s in all those years.
I'm not surprised. Can we create a more beautiful $100 bill? Well, I don't think so. That's right.
That's That's a good insight. So I agree with you. It's hard.
Other thing, while we're brainstorming here with the Myers-Briggs, I suppose the Enneagram too, you can probably do any career, no matter what combination you are. But depending on your combination, that it's going to be harder if you're going against your natural bent. You can do it, but at the end of the day, you're going to be really tired.
Exhausted and not happy.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's tough to say, well, you shouldn't go into that career. Well, you got the ability to do it. Just be aware that, if you're an introvert, you may not want to be in customer service or like if you're
or the welcoming committee and
oh, yeah, exactly. That's right.
unless you're social. But yeah,
Mhm.
like if you're expected to be personable and welcoming
That's
and
right. Yeah.
you're a 5, it's not gonna be a good fit. Maybe you'd be funny like you are. You're the
You
funny
can do it. You can do it, but then at the end of the day, you probably need a stiff
Yeah.
one.
That
Oh,
would
God.
be like telling me to be quiet
That's right.
or not have
That's right.
ideas. I could never
That's
have
right.
that.
Why don't you go on a 40-day retreat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
silent
You could just
retreat.
bury me at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is so helpful. So when did you meet other people? So Patrick was in your group,
Right.
of course, Bob Oakes. When did you meet people beyond that group? Like, did you
Well,
before
when did I
1990?
meet him? I did the first part of Helen's training way back when, about at Vallombrosa. So
90,
she
yeah,
and David and so I met them there. I think that was before the conference, the first conference in Stanford.
exactly.
Yeah.
Is it possible it was 93? Does that sound about right?
I'm not sure. I don't know when. I'd have to go back and I
Because
don't
I
think I have my
certified
plane
in
ticket anymore.
95 with Helen and David and Don and Rusty, but
Uh-huh.
they started in the late 80s.
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember. It was pretty early on. But then mostly I think, so I would have read things, but then that first conference at Stanford is when it met a lot of people. And it was like 1,200 people showed up. It was
I know.
amazing.
I got a huge mailing list from
Who
it.
are all these people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with different training and different
Mhm.
understanding. And most people didn't know subtypes. So it was
Right.
fascinating.
Sure.
And I got these mass quantities of mailing lists, people, because
Yeah.
before I only had the people I worked with.
Hmm.
And I didn't even know all the Berkeley stuff
Yeah.
that was going on because
Yeah.
they were advertising in a way. But then after that conference, I met Tom earlier though, like in 90.
Okay. Yeah.
So somehow I saw his advertising.
Hmm.
He was doing the internal work with NLP. So I thought, yeah, no, that's what I want. Because I was always focused on the internal experience, like the
Hmm.
participation below the iceberg was like, okay, wait, that's what someone's showing. And having been in a very superficial industry and really having
Yeah.
appreciation for that, I always wanted to understand what was underneath, like
Yeah.
real person, not, and then working with people. It was more effective if you understood the real person.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I'm trying to think what was really available. So if you were doing your dissertation and you learned in 71, but you were doing your actual dissertation in the 80s, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
saying? Oh,
Right.
back away from 81, so 78.
Hmm.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
That was really an important time in the Enneagram. It was the first kind of broad expansion. So you doing that at the time the books were
Hmm.
coming out, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Dissertation is a book.
Yeah.
So,
That's right. Yeah. I think I had the first actually written description of all the types, kind of in paragraph form.
oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
But, the people who are that's why I got to be an honorary founder. The people who are the founders actually published their
Yeah.
stuff. No, nobody ever publishes a dissertation. That's right. Or if they do, it's about 800,000 on the Amazon bestseller list. Yeah,
You can't find it.
that's right.
No, you were right in the forefront. You were the
Yeah.
first class
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
was post Echazzo's teaching. So that's
Right.
very significant.
Yeah, we were very early on. Yeah. And then not everybody in that class went on to, do the promulgate the Enneagram,
Yeah.
but some of us did. I'm trying to think. I think it was probably mostly Patrick and me, Pat O'Leary.
Mhm.
I don't know the other folks that did it
Did
might
you know Ted
workshops
and
or
Kathy?
pardon.
Did you know Ted and Kathy before 1994?
Um, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you kind of saw each other, or like I saw people that I didn't know before at that 1994.
Yeah, yeah. And then eventually I was on the board of directors of the IEA, and then Ted and Kathy were on the board.
Yes.
Yeah, that was after the first, the founders were all the first people on the board, and
Right.
then they let other people, the
Yeah.
second string came in.
I was the second string.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when I met them. Um,
Had you met Don?
no, I
Because I
knew
know
of him. I
Russ
read
was,
his book, but I don't think I met Don until probably that first uh, conference, or Don and Russ. Yeah,
it seemed like people were just getting to know each other, that you didn't know one another. Yeah, you should have been
right.
on the panel because you were
Yeah,
part of the beginning too. Yeah.
yeah.
But you're right, they were going by books, not knowledge. But having said that, talk about trying to get the group together to start the IEA, that it was a wonderful idea. And what I remember vividly is Don having the term, the International Enneagram Association. There was a purple flyer,
Mm,
what he was calling his work. And then at
yeah.
the end of that panel, at the last day of the 1994 conference,
Hmm.
he gave that term to the group.
Yeah. Hmm.
Remember that? And then he changed to Enneagram Institute. But
I don't know. I'm trying to think of who who mediated that, who worked that out. Because I think, Helen and David wanted to have this International Enneagram Association, and
yeah,
Don was not originally keen about it, but
no.
someone talked to him and said, "Okay, let's all put this together." But I can't remember who that was.
Well, he changed his mind on the panel. Like
Ah,
it was like a point of tension
yeah.
because he'd already named this name, he'd already
Mm-hmm.
given out
Mm-hmm.
the flyers. So
Mm-hmm.
that last day, that last panel is when he changed and then gave.
Okay. Yeah. But
So
I
I,
wonder if somebody kind of talked to him ahead of time to,
well, that would be a good
I
thing
don't
to
know.
ask Rusty, wouldn't it? Because Russ was there as well. Yeah, that would be interesting to
Yeah,
see.
I don't know who, I'm not sure.
I just remember he felt like it was a no-win, and then it gave him a chance when the direction it was going is that we needed one group rather than a bunch of different
Right.
groups.
Yeah.
And in order to make that happen, the International Enneagram Association was already the great term.
Mm-hmm.
Don had told me that he was frustrated that people weren't just respecting what he was doing as a business, but that
Hmm.
then at the end of that panel, he saw a way for it to make sense.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much think that was probably true, but I don't know who would have influenced him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps Brian, his partner, Brian.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. And I think also um, the International Enneagram was mostly national at that time. It was mostly the States. It's like
Yeah.
I know somebody from Australia who keeps saying, "Ah, yeah, the World Series. It's all American teams." What do you mean the World Series
There were
baseball?
some Canadians. Come on, there were Canadians.
There you go. That's right.
It
So
was
now it's international for sure. Amazing.
no, I totally agree.
Hmm.
And then do you remember the first conference, there were more people from other areas. And the ones that impressed me were the Danes, because per capita, they have more people that know the Enneagram than any place
That's
are
right.
in the world.
Yeah.
And taught there like 7 times. And it's, I could just be in a restaurant having breakfast. Like, oh, why are you here? I'm here to teach. Well, what are you teaching? Oh, this personality typology. Which one? I go, the Enneagram. Oh, that's my Enneagram type. The waiter, the waitress, wherever I'd be.
I see. They all know their type.
And
Now,
it's
does anybody figure out why this is appealing so much to the Danes?
well, it's because they started teaching. They studied with Don and Rusty, but it's a small country. It's like the size of the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And they used it in business, and it's a very business oriented.
Yeah. Okay.
You must progress. You must improve.
Mm-hmm.
A 614 culture.
Yeah.
So improvement was very important, and it's standard. Every business does it. So something like the Enneagram would be the next thing you do. Because I wondered the same thing. So why does Denmark have so many people?
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they'll do professional training, and then I taught a professional training there as well. And those same groups of people go to all the professional trainings. It's just what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it is international, but it was nice. Remember, like, I think it was probably 1997, the first one after the 96, where there were more people from other parts of the world that had studied with Don or Russ, Helen and David. They'd come from these different countries, Amsterdam or Australia, like you're saying, and it was international.
Yeah. And there was a Jesuit, Paul Robb, who was not in the class with Pat and I, but he was in a class after ours that Bob Oakes taught. But he had a thing called Institute of Spiritual Leadership. And people from all over the world, mostly religious, probably all religious, came from Africa, Asia, all over the world to his program. And he taught them the Enneagram. So I think he was responsible for a lot of it getting out of the States and into the world, because those folks would bring it back and then teach it to wherever they came from. Yeah. Paul Robb, he was a good 5.
Well, no idea. That's a new name. Thank you.
Yeah.
And when you were organizing everything at Loyola, what did it take to pull that off? I know it was really hard for David Daniels to pull off Stanford. He had to use a lot of cloud, and he had to, then they never wanted to do it again.
It wasn't a problem. I mean, Pat O'Leary was the kind of the interim president, I think, of the IEA. So he and I worked together, and we had some people in Chicago who were interested in the Enneagram, and people out on the West Coast, were interested in the Enneagram. So you had kind of the Midwest and the West. I don't know if we had too many Easterners at that time.
No,
but we just
the divide is what we called you, from those of us that were offshoots from Berkeley, called your group East of the Divide, the big divide.
I see.
You probably don't know that, but what's
so that's actually that's where I met a lot of people too, inviting them to come. And the original thing was, well, let's see if we can come to some agreement. Can we all agree about what is the kind of essential aspects of the 1, the 2, and the 3, and the 4? And the conclusion of that was we're not going to we're not going to come to that one. It's every school on their own. So that's where I met. That's probably where I met Ted and Kathy and
Eli.
Was Don there? Was Don?
Don didn't go. He protested. He was afraid that this information would be used and his copyright violated. So, but he did send Rusty, and he sent.
You're right. You're right. That's right. That's right.
Partner.
Who?
He sent his partner, who was also his attorney.
Okay.
Right.
Make sure we didn't steal anything.
Yeah.
So,
but then it was a chance for Russ to just be his own person rather than just a co-teacher.
That's
was
right. Remember,
wrong.
that's right. He and I were on a 5 panel talking about
Sure
5.
were. I
That's right.
remember it well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it was a edit this out, pain in the ass to coordinate that, but it really came off.
It came off. I just remember David Daniels calling me and saying, Catherine, this IEA is never going to get off the ground. You've certified with everybody. Can you get some people together? So it's cross.
Yeah,
And so I did. Some people who trained with Don and Russ and
yeah,
Ted.
yeah.
So it's a little
But we
more.
didn't have any trouble getting Loyola to sponsor it. I mean, they were happy to, I'm sure, to take the money that somebody's renting out this room, and then we were able to use the dorm, Mertz Hall, people in. And then
Yeah.
Helen wanted to use schools to give it prestige.
Yes,
So
that's
the
true.
first few were at universities, and then I think people said, I'm getting too old to live in a college dorm. Let's have this at a hotel somewhere.
I remember that. I
That's
remember.
right. Yeah. So that was the end of the academic.
And that was 98. And I was on the board then where we
Uh-huh.
planned it at a hotel.
There you go. That's right. Thank
We
you.
wanted the cookies delivered and, the comfortable pillows and
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
that was,
You didn't
that's
have to go down the hall to the bathroom. That's right. Mhm.
memory. I just remember those dorm rooms.
Ah, yes.
Loyola. And you know what I
Mhm.
remember too is it rained and I had never seen
Never seen rain?
sideways
Ah,
because the blowing off the lakes, it
lake.
just like,
Yeah.
hey, it's going sideways. I grew up in California. The rain
Yeah,
would come
that's right.
down
Well,
or maybe slant a little,
come to
but
the Midwest, seen amazing things.
yeah, I had
You
not.
should be here in the winter. That's right.
I bet.
Oh God, the good
And
old days.
yeah, really. What was your impression of first coming together as with the intent to try and come up with a unified description of the types? I mean, I know that's when people added the subtypes because my books sold
Mm-hmm.
went
Mm-hmm.
out everywhere because I had kind of gotten who taught what and how and when.
Mm-hmm.
In bullets, also bullets, not unlike what you had with the Enneagram.
Right.
But it did kind of make things a little more universal, wouldn't you say? That we better understood the types. Because I remember
Mm-hmm.
who taught the 7? Was that Pat's wife? Yeah. She taught the 7. And the way she was
Okay.
teaching 7 had more of a 2-ish quality than the
Okay.
way I learned 7. And then when we added the instincts, it kind of
Yeah.
clarified that they were both 7. They were just different. And I
Yeah.
would,
Yeah. Different expressions. Yeah.
yeah. So those that came down through the Jesuit line described
Mm-hmm.
7s a little more personably
Mm-hmm.
and less mental than the way those that came down through Kathy Spieth and Helen.
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay.
But then after that, then the 7 became more well-rounded and all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, Naranjo wasn't at that training until 2003. Do you remember that when he
Mm-hmm.
first?
Mm-hmm. That was in I forgot where that was now. Minnesota or
LA.
what was
And
LA?
and then 2004 was in East Coast. I can see it, but it was all on the subtypes. In 2004, it's
Yeah.
all on
I
type.
do remember him. He brought his entourage with him,
Yes, he did
and
in
then they kind of
2004.
retyped everybody,
Yes, yes.
which created little animosity. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's because they didn't know the way Naranjo and Echazo looked at type.
Mm-hmm.
It had been overly generalized, or each author had sort of modified the types and then
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
given qualities that didn't hit the core issue.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think anything was really that upsetting because people were actually, even if they were mistyped, it was in their tritype.
Mm-hmm.
Naranjo
So it
didn't.
wasn't that far off. Yeah.
Yeah, Naranjo didn't realize that, but there were a lot of 6s that wanted to be 9s, social 6s, and were
Mm-hmm.
really upset that they weren't, that he thought they were 6s. but that was kind of like his specialty, is how the 6 hides in plain sight, adapts qualities from
You
other
know, did he, because his latest, description of the subtypes is different from the way I originally learned it. And so I'm sorry he passed away, but did he just make that up, or did he get it from interviewing a lot of people and talking to people about, well, what is it like to be this subtype? In other words, does he make it up, or has he got some data?
He theorized based on clients and
Yeah.
people in the trainings. But the reason he didn't write the subtype book until 2012, and why he asked me to include his views in my book,
Yeah.
he wasn't ready. He didn't have enough data. And he said, you have much more data than I do. Just put me in your book so that I'm represented, so that people know my opinion. But it's that part I'm talking about where he didn't notice those little archetypes, but like he did notice the counterphobic 6 was just as afraid as the phobic, but they go into the fear just immediately.
So each type has a counter type.
Yeah, well, he didn't teach that until my research kind of suggested there were counter types. And I said, isn't there a counter type for every type? And he said, well, no, because everybody's not phobic. And I go, no, I don't mean everyone's like phobic or counterphobic, but counter their
Yes, that's right.
passion
Counter the energy of that
and
type.
fixation.
Yeah.
And I shared with what I had given in my book the first night he'd asked for it, because Jack Labanuskas had told him that I was going to be in his class, and he'd noticed my Enneagram style research on presentation and style. And so he said, well, have her give it to me, because Jack wanted to know, is she right or is she not right? Can you read it? And so he said, oh yeah, I liked what she did. I'll read it. So he was first night and decided to teach it. So when I was saying, well, wait a minute, but I know 4s that go against, and they claim their entitlement, not just like, oh, I want to be like you, not you, And he said, oh yeah. Then he had discovered sexual 4, and Naranjo had put Hitler as a 6. And then how could he not know that Hitler was a sexual 4? Because the vehemence and the intensity, way delivered. And I don't know if he spoke German, but all of us saw all the videos of Hitler giving speeches. And now you can get the translation. And so he used that as an example of how he mistyped, that he hadn't seen something very important, and it was a countertype. So he decided to look at each type as we went through to see if what I found in countertypes matched what he would think. And actually, I had ranked them in stacking order. Like the obvious type would be what you and I would consider the stereotype of a type. For example, like with 8, you want autonomy. So he had the countertype of social as being like the friendly versus the my stuff, don't touch my stuff kind of attitude. But I said, yeah, but the sexual countertype too, because how do you surrender and still have autonomy? But you want to give up your autonomy for the union fusion.
Yeah.
It's not natural, so you can't hold it. And he said, yeah, that's a countertype too. And then later in 2004, people asked the same question I did. And he quickly went through what he thought was the most overt countertype. But it's actually stacking order, just like.
For the 8, it's the social, right? He's got that as the.
Yeah, the self-pres 8 is what was taught. The stereotype of 8 was self-pres 8. And they're somewhat more introverted than, or more laconic for sure, than the social. Whereas the social, yeah, you're my friend or foe. Okay, you're my friend today. We'll have fun, but tomorrow you might not be.
That's right.
And
that's right. You're dead to me.
You're dead, which actually any 8 can do. But then it's a different dilemma. You can see it. You can see the social 8 being so different from the self-pres 8. Self-pres 8 more like the junkyard dog, like having a bunch of stuff that is being protected, whether it's like primitive and parts of cars, or whether it's like the best yachts and the best of everything, needing all of it. It did vary according to Tritype in my experience. But yeah, the sexual 8 is like, what am I? Do I connect or disconnect or, okay, I'm autonomous. No, I don't want to be that autonomous.
How can I be a self in relationship?
Yeah, how can I be
one or the other?
Yeah.
I have found and don't know what it means. The harmony triads, which David came up with later on, with not the same as the tritypes, but the harmony, the 3 equilateral triangles. The counter type, if you lay it out around those equilateral triangles, the counter type is there. And I don't know what that means in the harmony.
It means we can find it either way.
Yeah.
Because
I wondered, well, where the hell why did this become a counter type, for each of the 9 types? But it lays out on that harmony triad.
And with the unfolding of the tritypes, it is the spiral out. It begins with 3, 6, 9, 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, so that all 9 numbers, it's numerology. And you just go from pure primary, 3, 6, 9, variations with hexad types. And eventually the outer points of the tritypes are pure hexad. And the inner point where everything starts is pure. And so it's just one variation. So a 2, 5, 9 is just 2 points off of the 3, 6, 9. So 3, 6, 9 being the primary. 2, 6, 9 is just one hexad with 2 primary. And then you just move outward in a spiral, and like a flower unfolding pattern. And then those outer points are the most specialized, the ones that are pure hexad. And people
what would be an example of that now?
Like the last point is 4, 7, 8. Why is that? Well, the 4 is the last of the heart center, and the 7 is the last of the head center, and 8 is the last of the gut center. People say, wait a minute. No,
that's be the 1 if you're going in that direction.
You're starting moving out from 9. So everything begins and ends with 9. So 8 is the last gut type. It's fully individuated in the process. So the 4, 7, 8, triple hexad, triple creative, triple individualistic, the least conforming, and not necessarily trying to be stubborn, but seeing another way to do it, whether you like that or you don't like that, positive or negative. So that is, and actually the 4, 7, 8 sits, you'd have to see the Tristar at 0.4. The 0.1 is the most external piece, is the 1, 4, 5. So it's including 0.1. It is on the 1 side rather than the 8 side. So 4, 5, 9 would be the top of the 9, but there are 9 types in the 9 sector, and there are 9 types in the 6 opposing sector, and 9 types in the 3 sector initiating. So then it starts to make sense as you see go around. And the first tritypes that we recognize were the Hornevians and the harmonics, basically. And so those were our first 9 tritypes: 3, 6, 9, 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8. And then, but there were still 18 we didn't know about, but they were always there mathematically. You just had to do the math and keep it outward. And then it repeats then and repeats and repeats through.
I'm trying to visualize it, but if I put it, I'm visual. Rather than on it, but so if I see it graph.
I'll pull it up.
Okay.
So just imagine these are all coming off a 9. All 3, and this is all 6.
Okay.
So initiation and opposition, integration, or resolution, whatever pattern of 3 we want to use, but it begins with the 3, 6, 9, the top. So what we found first were the Hornevians and the harmonics right here. It's just like not random. And you can go off each point.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have another image where you can see it through the the hexads looking down at it. And
Yeah.
it's not by chance that we all agreed on these first. Like the 258 to the 468 to the 126. And you go, wait a minute, they all have 6, but 258 doesn't. But it adds up to 6 in numerology. But the internal, they all add up to 9.
Yeah.
Then each variable is related. So from the 147, then there are variations, but it's working like this outward.
Mm-hmm.
And then those at the furthest points are the most specialized. But the center one always has the type in it, like 9. But on either side are the other 6 numbers that create the pure hexad. And the same here. So 378 holds 3, just as 135 does. But the 278 has no 3, 6, or 9, and 478 has no 3, 6, or 9. So this is the rarest combination. That's probably a good thing because you don't want that many people thinking independently and not cooperating. It's a natural course of doing things.
That's right.
And there are more 3, 6, 9s than any other combination, which Naranjo believed as well. But the 126 is like the doing it right version, but the 468 precedes the 126. So we would say that's, Karen Horney's compliant or adjusting. Now, it didn't really make perfect sense to me until I gave each center a Karen Horney type. So that 7 would be the aggressive withdrawn type. Moving
right, that's right. That's right.
Me, but if the going gets tough, yeah, I'm out of here.
That's the way Russ and Don have it. So they've got in each center you got the 3 trends.
But what I did differently is I gave each center aggressive, withdrawn, or compliant.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Not originally.
No? Oh, okay.
They had types like 126. Yeah, so maybe I'm behind. I mean, I certified a long time ago. Maybe they changed it. So say what you're saying, actually.
Well, all you gotta do is, so you got, do you have your chart there for the, just so where you got this, where you go for stress and relaxation?
Well, I don't use stress and security because it was a mistake.
That
was Oak's misunderstanding.
And
he corrected him, but Oakes continued using it because he liked it's sin and redemption. Does that sound right to you?
What were the 2 words?
Sin and redemption, that he liked the lines going one way, where Naranjo said he never said you go one way healthy and another way unhealthy.
Right.
For stress security, that when you're stressed, you go to the whole system stress. Your wings, your lines, it's all stressed. Or it's
I think when we learned it, it was only in one direction.
He said he hypothesized it in a study group, Naranjo, but he threw it out the same night because it was dialectic instead of trialectic.
Yeah. But I think most people are saying these days, if you're under stress, you can go to the high or the low side of that place. If you're relaxed, you can go to the high or low side of that point. That makes sense to me. Yeah,
I certainly found that I could do low too. I don't just do low 5. In fact, I do a lot of research at 5. It's not low at all.
Right.
So go back to Karen Horney.
I just switched the 7 and the 1. Here's, I think Ted Donson and Kathy Hurley, I think they have it this way. Maybe Helen does too. So she's got moving against, meaning you want to set boundaries, you want to fight, or you want to be, stand on your own 2 feet, claim your space. So moving against, it can be assertive, it can be aggressive. So they've got all the againsts in the belly center. Moving towards, meaning you want to be cooperative or compliant, move towards something that is good for me. I like it. I want to take it in. So all the heart people are in the towards, and then moving away from, step back, think about it, be more objective, or detach and withdraw. So each trend has a high side and a low side. So
Uh-huh.
here you got all the against in the belly, all the towards in the heart, all the way froms in the head. So that was one theory. Another theory is here you've got, this is what you're talking about. So here you've got all three trends against, away from, towards in the belly, all three trends in the heart, towards, against, away from,
I have
all
it
three trends
combined.
in the head.
I don't have one or the other. I have it combined.
Okay. What does that mean? You got to
Well,
combine.
that means that the moving against center is the gut, and the 9 is the moving away of the gut. The 1 is moving towards, like adapting, and the 8 is moving against, moving.
Yeah. So that's this one.
Well, no, it's both, because I'm also giving it an individual towards, away, and adapting. So I'm putting the two together.
This one and this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I see the
So here's
center. Yeah,
what
I
I
agree
did.
with those centers.
Yeah. So I got it this way. So instead of the 7 moving against and the 1 moving towards, I've got this way because now, given these connections, that gives you access to all three trends. So you're an 8, so you would tend to move against. If you want to move away from, you go to your 5, step back, think about it, what's going on here, ready, aim before you fire. And if you want to go to moving towards, then you go to the 2. So this connects the triangles, or the stress and relaxed places, gives you access to all three trends. So if you're a 9, you move away from. If you want to move towards, go to the 6. If you want to move against, go to the 3. So I basically just changed these two.
Yeah, I see how you're doing that.
So it's just a different way, a different theory. There is a test that measures Karen Horney's 3 trends, a guy out in Colorado. I've used it on undergraduates, and I don't know that it's that good, the test itself. I mean, that's one way to do it, or I suppose you could get a bunch of 7s together. And what do you move towards or against? As a 1, do you move towards or against? But that was why I put it this way. So
That
now
makes,
you've got access to all 3 trends.
but this would be a third way.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like
Yeah.
the third, because everything in 3s always names more things. So this is naming the interconnectedness.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
the doing it by center is naming kind of the underpinnings, the visceral part, and doing it by type within each center, varying those,
Yeah.
the variation. And then this gives the interconnectedness. I love it. No, really think about all
You
3.
can never have enough theories.
No, you can never have enough. Okay, now I do want to show you mine. So the whole gut center is aggressive.
Yeah.
Within the aggressives, there's the
Hmm.
aggressive, the withdrawn aggressive, and the compliant aggressive.
Yeah.
And then the whole heart center is adjusting or trying to lead with the mother, like the toddler work,
Yeah.
self-pacing solutions. So
Yeah.
the 3 is the aggressive compliant. They still need the applause. They still need validation. And the 2 is double compliant. Like that's why they kind of have a lot of shoulds going on.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think they're 1s. And then the 4 is the withdrawn compliant, but they still need the admiration. And then, so I have the 7 as aggressive for sure, withdrawn, but I have the 1 as the compliant aggressive.
That's right. Yeah.
Still doing what they should. They're not just free, impulse driven like the 8. They're trying to get the right answer. So they're compliant to society or their inner critic. That's the way I looked at it. But then I worked in whether it was blocked action or blocked thinking,
Yeah.
feeling, people, this kind of
Yeah.
this was in 95, I guess, when I started. And how the blocked feeling of the 7, but aggressive thought and resignation, meaning you're going to leave. You're not going to hang in there if things get boring with this. So the 5 would be blocked action
Mm-hmm.
with resigned thought and emotion, staying in the internal state.
And how is the 6 a blocked thinking?
They don't trust their thinking. They look to some outside source to
Yeah.
confirm or negate their perspective. They need something that confirms they're doing the right thing, because if they make a mistake, then they have something else to blame. Well, I looked it up and that's what it said to do, or 10 of my friends said that, whatever it is, looking outside themselves. So the 1, 2, 6 being the 3 types that adjust their thinking. And so you're saying, really, you're looking at this movement.
Yeah, right.
Which I really like. So looking at it in terms of whether it's like physical heart, head, or and using, like, for example, resignation, withdrawing, and moving away, all of Karen Horney's terms rather than just one term. And then it made more sense. But then I kind of put it together with the what we knew at the time. The 1, 3, 5 would be like the head, the extreme head, and the 2, 7, 9 would be the extreme heart, and the 4, 6, 8 would be the extreme will. But this is before I had as much research on the fact that we use all centers at heart.
Right.
But by putting it all together, then in my mind, it was explaining what you're now explaining by looking at what would come from the 8 and the 7. But you see 1 as more aggressive. 7 is what you're saying. And I remember, maybe I was talking to you at the conference in 1996, a dispute whether the 3 assertive types were the 1, 8, and 3, 3, 7, and 8. And based on what I'd learned with the Chazos trialectics, it would have to be 1 percenter, which would make the 7 third aggressive type. But the aggressive of the withdrawns, like the checking, double checking, paranoia underneath it, and the thinking. Whereas the 1, I mean, but I see where you're going with that. I really do. I like it.
And I think Karen Horney herself, I'd have to look it up again, but she has, have different, she's got a little bit of types, but the perfectionist, she calls the moving against. So even she thinks that the perfectionist, he didn't know the Enneagram. So I would go with that. Or anger is the passion.
Narcissism, kind of like anyone narcissistic went against by her definition of terms.
Yeah, they might be. Yeah.
She didn't use the word narcissistic, but self-focused. We'd now use the word narcissistic. But she had more adjectives. Do you remember the actual study itself with toddlers? Because she liked qualitative research. She'd observe. I love qualitative, just because I want to discover. I don't want to prove or disprove. I want to learn something new with TP. But what struck me is she had these infants that were separated from their mother, and the mother was have a bland face, not do anything, and this false wall of those cardboard kind of bricks between the toddler and the mother, and what the child did. And whether the child pushed through the blocks or got angry being separated or whether the child pleaded like, Mommy, or the pleading, or the child just said, whatever, she's not coming, and then started to focus on something.
Now, who is that did that?
That was Karen Horney's research.
Really? Okay.
Toddlers.
With toddlers. I didn't know she did that. Okay.
I read that right out of high school. It was in our inner conflicts, I believe. She was very progressive for the women's. And so it was kind of popular when I was in high school to look into those things. And so I found her books then when they started coming out in paperback, because before they were hardbound. And our inner conflicts, I thought, yeah, everybody's got a conflict of some kind. I kind of would notice, yeah, that's your conflict. You think I'm conflictual. We should just see what you do. That's conflictual too.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't do it in a overly aggressive way, but I would
Mhm.
be pretty plain spoken about it. Yeah, you think that person's like not a problem, but they're a problem in a different way. But having said that, I was really interested in how she came up with the concept, because was it with adults? Was it, who was it with? And it was with children, toddlers.
Yeah. I mean, Adler has it too. He's got, so Adler would have been in before
Yeah,
Karen Horney, but
right.
he's got a quadrants, but he's got those three in his theory too.
I don't know his work well enough to
Hold
say. I know it preceded Karen Horney's.
Okay, let me see if I can find Adler. What is this? It sounds like we got a personality class going on here.
We do. This is great.
Amazing. Okay. So he's got the social interest. So he was big on that. We have a social instinct, and the healthy person has a well-developed social instinct. So, okay. So then he's got you either going to be an active or passive. If
Okay.
you are, your social instinct is constructive and you're active, then that's the healthy person, socially useful.
Yes.
If you have a kind of a destructive social interest and it's active, that's dominant. So
Right.
that would be the aggressive.
Yes.
Now, if you are passive constructive, that's the getting. So that's the moving towards. And the passive destructive would be avoiding, moving against, moving away from, moving towards.
Not
So that's
not unlike
Adler.
yeah, that's not unlike attachment theory, whether and then whether
Mhm.
it's an anxious attachment or secure
Yeah.
attachment.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think you can always have triads and quads, variables of we it could be the 3 by 3 by 3 like the Enneagram, well, because there would be the one in between all those four quadrants. But the quadrants make total sense.
Mhm. Can I show you one more thing
Yes, yes, please.
that has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about, but that's all right.
That's great.
Because we're talking about quadrants. Somebody did some research on my Enneagram test, and let me just show you something. He did a latent. What he did is there's like, I don't know, 160,000 people. It's a big subject pool. And he did a latent class analysis, which is similar to, well, a little bit like factor analysis.
So the end result of taking your test and what people came out as, and
Correct.
basically what
So
other
then okay. So what happened is that so he's got this thing called squaring the circle. Can you get the Enneagram circle into a square? So when you plot it out, you've got eights who are on the active axis, nines who are on the passive. That's just where they fell, just statistically. Over on disliking change, you got basically the ones, and those who seek change would be the seven. So you got that axis, kind of disciplined, free spirit, self-contained, more not so much boundaries. But it fell out this way. So you've got up here in kind of this quadrant, you've got the eights and the threes, and the sevens are up there a little bit. So 8, 3, 7. Down here, you've got 4, 2, and 9 kind of fall into that area. And over here, you've got the 5 and the 6
the
and the
down.
one up here. So when you take my test, in other words, there's gonna be a lot of variability within each type.
Yes.
And so the guy who did it, he's a 5'8". I forgot what his next score is.
Three,
So
three probably.
he actually comes out. Yeah, I think that's right. He comes out up here. I'm 5'9", and so I'm down here. So
Heavens.
we're both fives, but very different expressions. He's obviously more 8-ish. He's also a J on the Myers-Briggs. I'm a P. He's a T. I'm an F. So he's more assertive. Let's get it done. Let's make a decision. I'm saying, let's think about this. Let's wait a little bit, see what happens. but we're both kind of self-contained, but we're very different kind of fives.
Exactly.
But
And
it doesn't fit the Enneagram theory that well. So I've got to figure out, well, what does this
oh,
mean?
I think it does. It gives subtlety within
Yeah,
the
yeah,
theory,
yeah.
and the variables that, yes, there is, you can recognize that 3, 7, 8 anywhere because they're the most extreme. Like on the Tristar, they're the
hmm
mover, shaker, candlestick maker.
Yeah.
I do find that the twos try to stay within, like, they're not going to assert their needs until they say something like, well, after all I did for that person. But otherwise,
hmm
see themselves down here. So I don't know what questions they're answering to
Yeah.
get that. But I find this with
hmm
the 2, the 4, and the 9. And the 4s maybe have an immediate reaction when they don't like something, but it's not long and drawn out. It's like a quick negative, like, expression, and then
hmm
they pull back again.
hmm
But I see the 5 and 6, and there's so many 6s that think they're 5s because
hmm
they're introverted. They know they're kind of awkward and in certain social
Yeah,
situations.
yeah, yeah.
And they know, and if they're smart and identified with being smart, they
hmm
think that they're 5s. It's a common,
hmm
and
Yeah.
then the social 5 is very 6-ish in many ways. So no,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm liking the way this fell out because
Interesting.
it
Okay.
is going kind of the way the 1 ends up holding this position. Now, the 1 and 8 are still in the upper 2,
Yeah.
and that matches too.
Yeah. Yeah. The one is kind of they're disciplined and controlled, but also they're kind of assertive, that's
Yeah. And when they've had it, they've had it. If you cross the line,
hey, that's right. I know what's best for you.
yeah.
So let me correct your errors. That's right.
Because I studied body language and human behavior and all those different systems to try and manage people and work with people. With the 1s, I could always recognize them because when they'd have an ugly emotion, it would rise up just like it would with me as an 8. I have a brother who's
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
And there's the attempt to stop it. So it's almost like either the mouth goes really tight or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
jaw's sort of dislocated, like they're trying to recover because a good person doesn't say or do
Right.
whatever they might have said or done. And yet with the 8, we're just going to say it.
hmm
And of course, I always needed to learn to zip it.
Yes.
Inside thoughts, Katherine, not outside thoughts.
hmm
Aggressive about what they know is right from their tried and true, and they're holding themselves to such high standards that they're pretty certain it's the way it should be for people, rules that need to be in place. And I know that working with people, absolutely, they were lookalikes, especially the sexual one would break more rules, find the loopholes. And whereas the 8's just going to say, yeah, that doesn't work. But the 1's going to say, oh, I'm going to prove it doesn't work. I'm going to find the way that I can justify my belief. So it takes a little longer, but they get there. Like the person.
Yeah, so that's right. That sexual 1 would be the counter 1.
Yeah. Yeah. And
kind of breaking the rules.
right.
How could a 1 do that? You say.
Yes. Yes. And plus the sexual is the change element in each type. Uh-oh. The thing that's important is to understand that, and from my research was that, okay, the self-pres is hold on to what you've got.
Right.
Where the concerns are, because you'd lose it otherwise. You got to have the resources. And then the social is like the standards we all should have, the values. But the sexual comes along and says, no, this is what has to change. So the sexual type is in a way a countertype. They're changing something. Now, it doesn't seem that way with the 2 because the sexual 2 is like a lot of the definition of 2 that went out was sort of like a soft sexual 2. But Ron's description of the sexual 2 was conquest.
Yeah.
assault. They weren't mild words. So the
Yeah.
male 2 was actually much more 8-ish emotionally than an 8.
Yes.
8 would just boom like a sledgehammer. You're not going to talk a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
The sexual 2 would have to win, and they would
Yeah.
emotionally too.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what was confused in the dissemination is how stony the 8 is. It's like, we're just going to say what we think. We're not going to get in a fight about it.
Yeah.
Emotion, because the minute we're in emotion, we've lost power.
Ah.
But the emotional 8 or 4 or 6 will get hardwired into showing and displaying emotion. But the 8 says, oh, then I've lost. I only have power if I
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
indifference, a stance of indifference.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, this is so much fun, Jerry. And just like the people that are really interested love the fact that other Enneagram teachers can talk about different things and
Mm-hmm.
share our work with each other.
All
Thank you.
right. Well, thank you for inviting me.
All righty.
All right. We'll see you again, and thank you in
Okay.
in Las Vegas.
All right. Good night.
Okay. All right.